then we would also, by documenting those experiences, try to support directly those groups that are so vulnerable and that are trying to do something about it, with the overall goal of demilitarizing U.S. policy towards Colombia. We'll go to the next one. We would try and have a tangible impact through accompaniment, and then we'd also try and have a moral impact through encouragement. And I'll talk about those in a bit. And then we would also try and build a global movement, or at least contribute to the building of a global movement for demilitarization. Deterrence is actually the way accompaniment works, and I think Michael might not like this, but it's kind of a jujitsu. At least that's the way I can think of it positively. The enormous power that the United States has is you try and use it by saying, okay, if you don't respect human rights, then there will be a consequence. And it's not, in many respects, it's not a nonviolent thing to say we're going to withdraw certain kinds of support. I mean, in fact, we want them to withdraw support to the military anyway. But the threat of withdrawing support to the military or to the rest of Colombia can become an incentive to influence behavior. So let me go to the next one. You have to be able to at least suggest that there will be negative consequences if human rights are not respected. And we do that through a number of different ways. It's not only through the physical presence, it's also through grassroots mobilizations. So when something happens in San Jose de Partelo, we mobilize people to write to the State Department, to write to the Congress people, to write to the Colombian president, and so on. And try and exert pressure on the decision makers from the state who actually influence the armed groups. There has to be a chain of influence from us to the civilian state, whether it's the United States or the Colombian state, to the armed forces in Colombia, to the paramilitary, depending on who is actually the threatening force. Without that chain, you're in a much worse position to actually influence the behavior. Because you want the person, you don't want to have to confront the armed guy at the moment that he has been ordered to carry out an operation and he is prepared to do it. You want him to be influenced before that happens. You want to influence the chain of command. And the chain of command is both political and military. So you expose the human rights violations and therefore get more support and get more attention to what's going on. And you work with the government's desire to appear that they're respecting human rights. Most of these governments have signed international agreements of one sort or another that they've ratified within their national legislation that respects the right to life, the right to freedom, the right to any number of things that you then work with. Even if they're not abiding by the law, they have a desire to show that they're abiding by the law. So you also want to be clear about what, to the aggressor, what is it that is unacceptable. Sometimes there are things that the government might do that are legal, but that, for example, this peace community, they're saying they don't want any of the armed groups present in their community. Well, that includes the legal armed forces, because the legal armed forces have acted illegally in allying themselves with the paramilitaries and killing people and abusing people. But legally speaking, the armed forces actually have a right within Colombian national legislation to be present within this community. So then you work with a political, you're trying to show that those actions are still have some political cost, that we support something else, but you want to communicate what it is that you want them to do and not do, and that must be visible. The aggressor has to believe that you're actually capable of doing something. So if Michael Nagler went to the Minister of Defense in Colombia and said, I'm going to bring, my class is going to stop you from committing these abuses, probably he would not have a lot of credibility. Because there's no track record of the peace studies, the nonviolent studies class at UC Berkeley having done anything in Colombia yet. So you wouldn't be able to show that you can back up what it is that you're doing. You have to show that you have, for example, some support from congressional leaders who are holding the purse strings. You have to be able to show that you have something to back yourself up. And you also, as I was saying before, you have to know who the aggressor is. So that's about tracing that chain of command. If you don't, if a killing has occurred and it's so chaotic and people don't know who did it, I mean, that happens too. Like, was this the guerrillas, or was this the paramilitaries, or was this a common crime? What's going on? You don't necessarily know that you're going to be able to deter it through these methods. So the theory behind this is that there are actions that have unacceptable costs and there are actions with acceptable costs in any situation. So suppose you are a member of the commander of the paramilitaries. You know that if you kill the president, that's going to have unacceptable costs, even if the president is your political enemy. But however, if you kill Fulano, Joe Blow in some remote region, or you maybe just threaten them, and because you want them to displace, you want to be able to control the municipality where they're living, no one's really going to make a big deal out of it. So that has acceptable costs. The idea of accompaniment is that you change that space. So for the person who is being accompanied, you want the space in which they can operate with acceptable costs to be greater. You want them to be able to, for example, this peace community that we accompany, they have been able to return to some of their lands that they were not able to do without accompaniment, because the area for acceptable costs was greater. On the other hand, for the aggressor, you want the space of their unacceptable costs to be greater. You want certain kinds of actions that they would carry out if they have if there is accompaniment. You want the areas where that's unacceptable, where the consequences are unacceptable. You want more things to be the case for that. Is that? We'll ask questions about this. These things get more and more complicated, so I'm going to skip over some of them. But now, of course, what the actual line is between acceptable costs and unacceptable costs. You have the actual reality, and then you have the perception. Because people might perceive that we can exert unacceptable costs when actually we can't. That would be, for an activist who's threatened, they might perceive that we can protect them and say, I'm going to take a certain kind of risk, when actually we can't produce a consequence that would be unacceptable for the aggressor. In that case, they might have an unexpected danger because they think, oh geez, I've got this foreigner with me. I'm gonna go out on a motorcycle at night, even in this area that's really kind of sketchy, and because I've got a foreigner with me, what the hell, And actually, it might be more dangerous, and we might not be able to respond in a way. Or they might think they have all these Congress people behind them. We can, we don't have to worry about things. And then, regardless of their behavior, there might be dangers that they didn't expect. On the other hand, it might be that they're more inhibited. They actually think that they don't have as much space as they do actually have, and in that case, they might be inhibited, even though the real borders would suggest that they have that space. They're just not using it. Now, then of course the same thing goes in terms of the effective accompaniment, is that you want these spaces to become smaller, and so it also affects the perceived border between acceptable and unacceptable costs. You can go to the next Also, the same thing is true for the aggressor, that the accompaniment affects their perception of what the costs are going to be. So there might be, for example, they might think that they can get away with killing, the army might think they can get away with killing a leader of San Jose de Partidolo. And this is exactly what happened 2 years ago when the army carried out a massacre. They might have been working with the paramilitaries, or it might have been just the army, in San Jose de Partidolo, in a very remote area, like about 5 hours further up from where the Fellowship of Reconciliation team is. They killed 2 families. They used machetes. They killed children. They dismembered the bodies. One of the people killed was one of the co-founders of the community who had met with the vice president of Colombia. He'd come to the United States on a speaking tour before. He'd spoken at the School of the Americas at a protest. He was someone who did not really fear the army, and actually that's probably one reason why he ended up being killed, because he and his brother-in-law, his half-brother, saw the army there, and his half-brother said, "Let's go." And Luis Eduardo said, I can talk to the army. I'm not afraid of them. I've talked to them before. And he was with his girlfriend and with his 11-year-old son, and the army then just attacked him. And then the army killed another family about an hour and a half walk away that included like 2 kids, a 6-year-old and a 1.5-year-old. And in the wake of this community is already well known. And in the wake of this, there was an outcry, but not only in Colombia, but also in the United States, that we worked on organizing. I mean, you work with indignation. You work with it. And so we did vigils in front of the State Department. We got churches to send thousands of faxes to the State Department. Faxes. We got, we got congressional people to sign letters right away and send them to the Colombian government. The Colombian government initially, and actually still, said that the FARC committed the massacre. And the State Department withheld about $70 million in military aid for about 6 months because of the response to this massacre. And then the State Department said publicly that the brigade responsible for that area was not vetted, was not certified to receive any U.S. assistance. So probably the army misjudged that, and one could call that an unexpected blunder, because they thought that they could do it with acceptable costs. And actually probably it was a level of unacceptable costs for that, particularly for that unit. They also might think at certain times, oh, there's these foreigners there, we're not going to touch them, when in fact, again, we might not be able to produce the kind of response that, yeah. Yeah. You can skip that one. Right. So just one other thing, which is that there's also a moral or emotional element to the accompaniment, which is not about increasing their security. It's about being with them because they're a traumatized community, to be in solidarity with them, to connect with them, which is a very important part of the connection, and both for them and for the people who are accompanying them. Can you go to the next? Just one last thing is that the community itself very much appreciates the international presence, and has said that a lot of this is because of the FOR's respect for the community, that over the years we've developed an understanding of the community that then becomes a foundation for a relationship of autonomy and respect, in which we don't interfere with their decisions, we talk with them, we have a relationship with them, and they also respect our autonomy as an international organization. So I think you're right, I should stop there, so there's some time, a little bit of time, for some kind of dialogue. So I invite like questions, comments, whatever you want. Floor is open.
It sounds really great on theory that you go in the army with paramilitaries or whichever group don't do anything. But I've always felt that might not be the case, as you've probably seen that they don't perceive as unacceptable cost, and there is a lot of danger. And what was the worst experience, or what do you speak about the danger of going there, even being foreigner, even having all the support?
Are you talking about the danger to the international person or to the?
Well, because in a way, I'm from Brazil, in a way that this might be perceived in some areas of Brazil, by killing both of them, we get international coverage to show that we're even more powerful than people think we are.
Yeah. So does it really work? That's how I would kind of reduce the simplify the question. It's something we're always analyzing. If on the international side, if there is not some sensitivity, extra sensitivity to the security of internationals, then it might not work. And so that's something that we're always looking at. We're also trying to influence. So we're assessing it, and we're also trying to increase the amount of recognition and legitimacy that we have as an international organization there. And that's where this kind of safety, increased safety comes from. So if that's there, then it's likely to have an impact on on the people we're accompanying. Of course, then whenever the threats tend to be against the Colombians that we're accompanying, and so we're also always working to affect the dynamic of that. So when we'll put out information about threats that the army has made against some members of the peace community, for example, and call attention to it. So far, it works. I mean, it reminds me a little bit of modern medicine, which often can't really say what the causes are, but they treat the symptoms, and if it works, it's like, okay. And you can't always know what's going on inside the armed groups, but it's working. So we try to analyze, we try to figure out as much as we can about what the dynamics of the armed groups are. And in the area where we're working, the main problem, I mean, the guerrillas are present and they are a problem, but the main problem is the army and the paramilitaries, and we are able to influence their behavior.
How do you do this assessment? How can you analyze these groups?
Well, we talk with them. We don't talk with the legal groups, but we talk with the army, we talk with civilian officials, we talk with the church, we talk with the UN, we talk with the community members, we talk with other NGOs, we use our own observation, we try and have a sense of history. I mean, there's many different things that go into the assessment, but you're trying to see like what direction are things going in, what are holding some of the actors back, and just to see what's influencing the behavior of the different groups. And you can basically see it. I mean, it's not, people think of it as just being like, oh my God, the worst situation is actually not one actor, but two actors, because one actor you can deter, but when you have two actors who want to get at each other, they often don't care about the civilians in the middle. They're like, they'll use the civilians as hostages directly or indirectly, or they'll do it in a populated area, and that's where you want to go, get the hell out. Because that's really when the greatest danger is, and when the dissuasion is much more limited, because they're like more focused on the guy with the gun who's targeting them. Yeah. we have a total of 5 people. Which you think, oh my God, you know, Colombian Army has 140,000 or 340,000, I'm trying to remember, you know, somewhere in there, soldiers. The U.S. has like about 1,400 between soldiers and contractors in the country, and I think it's just like, it's insane. It's totally insane. You know, so you don't work, it's not based on numbers, it's really based on the people behind them and what we're able to mobilize here. And that's where you guys come in. You know, I mean, we're, for example, I wanted to announce this before the time runs out. We send delegations there. So we also have moments when we'll have like 15 or 20 people there who are visiting from the U.S., mostly from the U.S., who then come back and talk to their communities. And there's one in August, which I would urge you to consider because it's an incredible door into these movements and into Colombia, which is an incredible, incredible country. And it's networks. It's through the networks of people. It's not really through just the presence of the people on the ground. No international company, either from FOR or from Peace Brigade or the other company groups, has ever been killed or directly attacked in Colombia. There was a case in 1999 when 3 indigenous rights activists were kidnapped by the FARC and murdered. And I would say that the FARC paid a significant political price for that. They were from the U.S. The United States, the State Department was in dialogue with the FARC before that, and afterwards they cut off that dialogue. It became a very, very important international case. And I think probably within the FARC they realized they screwed up. Yeah. Excellent question. What's the training like for the 5 people who are there? We do a week-long training here, and then when people go to Colombia, there's several weeks where they're in training with the existing team. And it's very diverse. I mean, we work on issues from group decision-making to security analysis to Colombia, understanding Colombia, to dealing with authorities, like doing meetings, doing political work. And some of it is reading, some of it is interactive, role plays. A lot of it you have to learn on the ground from people there who are doing it. And a lot of it is just reading and understanding, like trying to get a better understanding of all the different dynamics. And it's something that we're always trying to increase. And also not just trying to increase, but update, because our project changes, the groups that we're working with in Colombia change, the conflict changes, the U.S. policy changes. And so it's an ongoing process of making that work. Yeah?
Do you need economic development?
No. And we decided that we did not want to do economic development so as not to kind of change the relationship with the groups that we accompany and make them look to us for material support, because that can then clog or cloud the discussions about security. And why is it that they want to be with us? And you know, I mean, so we decided we're definitely not going to go that way.
So what we call no fresh issue, bringing up something in the middle of the conversation that hasn't been there before, when the conversations we just get started.
Yeah.
John, what did you want to do about these, by the way?
Well, you bought them from me, so you can decide what to do with them.
These are very expensive.
I mean, you can give them out to people if you want.
They can make donations if they want.
Okay. And then why don't we hand that out just if people want? Yeah?
Yeah.
So I'll just pass that back.
John, thank you again very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your attention.